We are back on Morning Line. It is our final segment with our guest this morning. We're going to have one more segment in the show, but we'll have a special guest coming on talking about something happening here in town. But Ralph Schulz is with us, CEO of the Nashville Chamber of Commerce. It's good to have him on talking about the omnibus bill and how it may affect and impact business. As it stands right now, boy, I'll tell you, Ralph, you know, you see, and I don't spend as much time downtown besides coming down to work and doing stories, but boy, Nashville sure is booming, and the business coming, and what we've seen arriving here now from Oracle and everything else. What's your take on business? And I know some even saying, even within the business community and Butch Spirit, in that maybe pump the brakes on some stuff a bit, because it is crazy, the growth around here.
Nashville is just such a popular place.
Sure is.
We expect in the next 5 years 220,000 new jobs in the next 5 years.
Good jobs.
Good jobs. And over the last 30, we've grown 500,000. So in 5 years, it'll be half of that. It's just a popular place. Good business climate, good regulatory climate. So I don't know that we're going to be able to pump the brakes. I think businesses are going to come here. I think everybody's more attuned to how do we manage the growth? What do we need to do with our infrastructure? And what do we need to do to maintain the character of the city? That's why everybody's coming here, is the character of the city. And how do we stay friendly? How do we stay open? How do we stay engaged with anyone who wants to live here?
Yeah, you hit it on the head, is maintaining the appeal of the city. And when you have places like Rotiers going and being replaced by gosh knows what, some soulless new establishment that I just don't care about, or, you know, some of those really historic homes that were on Music Row where now Virgin's Hotel sits. And you know, sure, it's nice, it's business, and it's growth, but that's where I worry about things disappearing, you know?
You know, Nashville, if you navigated by landmarks 10 years ago and you came back here, you'd have a hard time getting around.
Sure, I get lost downtown now.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes you'll be sitting in a corner and say, which corner am I?
You blink and it is changed. Is it not so much? I think you're probably right. It's hard to pump the brakes now, but would you think, and I don't know if this is even for you to say, but I mean, maybe you scrutinize more closely the nature of the type of businesses that come here?
Well, I think from our economic development perspective, there's two things we're focusing on. First of all, we're focusing on diversifying some of the industry. Healthcare, strong in services, life sciences, and other businesses, that type will be a primary focus. The second thing is we've got a lot of people in this community that could benefit more from this economy if they had the right skills match and if they had the right opportunities to connect to building those skills and getting those jobs. So when you look at housing, transportation, education, you're looking at things that we need to gear up for people that are already here. So I think there's going to be a lot more strategic focus. Managing growth is maybe the larger task than stimulating growth. You know, for the last 30 years, pedal to the metal, grow opportunity by getting jobs. I think in the next 5-10 years, it's going to be more of a let's manage what's coming here so that we retain all those things that we want to be good about Nashville.
Right. I think it's great that you guys are thinking about that. It's interesting, too, because I know that you were a little late to the show today, but you arrived because you got here by Pedal Tavern? Was that,
yeah.
Did you come by Pedal Tavern?
It wasn't an option on Hillsborough Road.
An option on Hillsborough. Someday it just might be. That's all I'm going to say.
Right.
Let's go to Drew, I believe. We've got a call. We may as well take one in here before we wrap things up. Drew, you have a question about the Ford deal?
Yeah, I'd like to know his thoughts about corporate welfare out of the Ford deal.
Okay, well, I guess Ford deal is an example, which is not necessarily happening right here, but it's here in Tennessee. But corporate welfare, where you're, you know, giving certain things, be it Amazon, Oracle, whatever. How do you guys feel about that?
For long-timers in Nashville, think back to the arrival of the Nissan automotive plant in the 70s and 80s for this area. That transformed Nashville. Nashville had a stagnant economy for 20 years in that time. Opportunity wasn't expanding, it was declining. businesses were moving away from Nashville. Nissan moved that plant here, and that started a process that we're still benefiting from today. So when you create incentives in a strategic way to help businesses bring their business here, the economy wins for a long time.
So it's worth whatever the outlay is most of the time.
That Ford deal in West Tennessee is transformative for West Tennessee. It will change the nature of opportunity in West Tennessee. And Middle Tennessee, Nashville's already receiving benefit. Ford officials are already in Nashville looking at suppliers and businesses that can help them with supplies in West Tennessee. So I just have to tell you that the payback on those incentives is huge. One last thing about that. Look at Oracle. Oracle is going to bring 8,500 jobs to this area. But there are 11,000 other jobs that will be created because of it. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to go into a business that the employees of Oracle or anyone else wants to be served by, you have an opportunity to go into business now and create that business and have employees around that business.
Yeah, you have to compete for these businesses. I had a good friend several years ago who was the mayor of Portland, Oregon. And he was there involved with pitching a company, as was, I think, the mayor here in Nashville and Tennessee as a whole, and some others. And they thought they had made a decent offer to this company. And when he saw what Tennessee was offering, he said, we're not even in the same league. Mm-hmm. Meaning, for whatever reason, mm-hmm. Portland was not ready to give what we were willing to give. And they did not get the contract. I believe Tennessee did. But he just goes, Tennessee gave a ton to this company. And it'll be interesting to see if they get bang for their buck. And I don't know. I think you're right. Did we get a bang for our buck with Dell?
We did, because it stimulated a process that other tech looked at Nashville as well.
Even though Dell itself may not have lived up to what they originally said they were going to do.
We had benefit that went beyond that.
And they're still here to a degree.
Alliance Bernstein's another great example of restoring an industry that used to exist in Nashville. It kind of went away when J.C. Bradford went away. It's now back. UBS's arrival, Amazon. I mean, honestly, these have been strategic wins, almost once in a generation wins that are happening year after year after year.
Have you been to Louisville?
Oh yeah. Grew up in Louisville.
You did? Okay, so you may know more. I've been there a couple times, and I just remember walking, comparable in size to Nashville. I guess Nashville a little bit bigger. But the sense I get walking around Louisville is that it's stuck in time, like you kind of said Nashville was a few years back before we got the Nissan plant. I like Louisville. I have nothing to do with it. Great university there. It's a nice city. But by comparison, maybe you can give me a better, comparison between the two. I left there thinking Nashville, is what Louisville could be. Could be. But for whatever reason, they're not. And I'm wondering if it's because they haven't done a good enough job like Nashville has and Middle Tennessee to attract the business to make it grow. You compare Nashville, which seems very vibrant and alive. Louisville, nice city, kind of stuck in mud.
Detroit Publication wrote an article about why Ford in Tennessee and not in Michigan.
Okay.
And what they said in that article was that there was evidence over 30 years of investment in the community to make the community a desirable place to be. Middle Tennessee and Tennessee in general talked about the positive business environment down here and the ability for a business to operate. I just have to say that for Nashville, the awareness in 1990 to say, we don't have a plan, we need a plan, and then we got to make the investment. You combine that with Phil Bredesen as mayor saying, we've got to build the civic furniture that make this a vital place. And 10 years later, you see a process beginning where people are attracted to Nashville. And not every community has that same momentum. What's happening to Nashville now didn't start 10 years ago. It started 30 years ago. And that's why I think we have to be aware of the fact that we don't want to take 30 years to build the next opportunity as well. We want to keep this going at a
keep the ball
pace.
rolling, and it's amazing that it just has kept on. What community would you compare Nashville to now in terms of the way it's growing? A city, I mean, Las Vegas, or it was for a while. Vegas was a hot spot. Denver, what's on par?
I often tell people, if you want to know where Nashville's going, look at Denver 20 years ago.
Okay.
I think Denver, when you look at the economics, when you look at the lifestyle, when you look at the population, Denver's a great comparison. If you look at Denver now, that's where Nashville, I think, is going to be 20 years from now. Austin, fine place to compete with for economic prosperity. A lot of similarities, but a lot of differences as well. Denver's got that. You know, what surprises people when they come to Nashville oftentimes is the diversity that's in Nashville. They're not aware of the different populations that exist here. And when they get here and they see that diversity, Alliance Bernstein was one of those. They didn't come to town and say, where am I going to get my workforce? They came to town and said, what kind of culture exists in this city? And they met with 22 cultural institutions to find out about it. So the diversity of our population, the vitality of entrepreneurship and music, all of that vibe makes Nashville a great place to be. And when you look at the investments, whether it's the Frisch Center for the Visual Arts or it's the arena for hockey, Nashville's made the right decisions about how to expand opportunity for the people that are here.
Yeah, in terms of national profile, I mean, for years it was only Music City. And it still is. That is the main thing. Music City, it's much more than country. We both know that.
Yeah.
But we saw it just last night with the CMAs. What a big deal. We're the center of the music world last night. But how much of a profile did getting something, and I still remember when it happened, going to the news conference at the Wild House, and this little chubby guy walks up there, and it's Bud Adams, and he's announcing that the Oilers are moving to Tennessee, and I thought it was a joke at first. It's like, I was at that news conference. How big a deal was bringing an NFL team here? Is it overstated, or as terms of profile, did that help?
No, it was a big deal because it put Nashville on a different list. NFL teams pick their locations a lot based on marketplace. Bud saw this as a marketplace that was on the rise.
Yeah, he saw it ahead before it's where we are now.
When you talk to Alliance Bernstein, they'll tell you that they pride themselves in investing in businesses as they're beginning the rise. When they viewed Nashville, they viewed it the same way. They came here because they felt this city was propelling forward, and just like their business, they wanted to be here at the beginning of that.
Yeah. What an interesting conversation. Thank you for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I really do appreciate it. It's just fascinating to me. You've lived here how many years now?
Oh, gosh, 25 years.
25 years? Yeah, I'm right about here. I moved here in 95, and boy, we both have seen a lot change in that time. I know you say it goes back 30 years, but boy, in the time you and I, maybe there's a link there. We got here, and boy, the ball really started rolling.
I think you might be right. I was at the Science Center at the time, so I don't know.
Okay. Oh, man. Well, thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure seeing you.
Nick,
we'll talk again. I hope things go well. We'll take a break. When we come back, we've got a special guest coming on, Live Out Love Nashville. At a glance, we'll tell you what that's all about right after this.